I like something you've touched on, that most of us, even Zambian business owners, when you try to talk to them about it, they come out as like, no, I've never lost money, I've never been bankrupt. But because you refused to step down on your values, you ended up bankrupting the business.
Yeah.
How does one come back from bankruptcy? Because most of us would have gone into deep depression, like,
I did.
That's the end. I'm done. Get the job. Wasting time.
No, it was tough. I mean, we went through a process where we basically had to sort of evaluate the business, and there were lots of times before eventually filing for bankruptcy that I had, we were told, look, guys, you can't carry on like this. But then there was always that faith of another big client or another big job that's going to come to turn things around. And so we sort of kept going. But, inevitably we then ended up digging ourselves further and further in debt. But I was very stubborn about it. I mean, Mojo was my baby. Like, it was, like I said, it was a part of my character, So there's just a part of you that doesn't want to let this die. So it's just like, no, let's move on. But eventually, it comes to a point where you realize, right, okay, if you can't pay staff, then you pretty much don't have staff. And without staff, you don't have a team. Without a team, you don't have a business. Without a business, you don't have, okay, so let's rethink this. And so one of the things was obviously to start scaling down in terms of what we were doing. But the vision then was to scale back in order to expand. It wasn't to change the nature of the business. It wasn't to do anything differently. We had certain elements that we had as assets to the business that could still sort of pump some lifeblood into this entity. So, for example, as part of that Zambeef campaign, we started the Zamfest as a food festival, and so that then grew into being this independent entity that was then sort of surviving and wasn't doing too badly itself. And eventually we opened talks. We had two opportunities actually. One was with Havas, which is a French multinational agency, and the other one was with Dentsu Regis Network. So there was a time when I was faced with the decision of where to go, but then as a founder, when you start your own company, it was such a hard thing for me to do, because then the first thing that came into my mind was just I couldn't wrap my head or agree consciously to the fact that I'm going to be waking up in the morning, and if I'm late, somebody else is going to tell me that I'm late. I should be the one telling people that they're late. So there was that, and then just sort of the whole, it just felt like you're going out to get a job, and that was a hard thing for me to do. But thankfully, we got to a situation where we were able to get into a partnership with Dentsu Regis Network. Initially, it was an affiliation that opened doors for us to start doing media works with the likes of Zambian breweries, etc. And then eventually, we basically merged, and I got shareholding there. But more to your question, how does one come back from that? There was a point where it was coming from all angles. I mean, even the company that provided us with a security guard needed their money, and that's not the person that you want to owe. So it's just like, if that's the guy that's securing your premises, he's probably not the guy you should be owing money and go for months without paying, because that's pretty important. But so we had a lot of that, and the approach. We then sort of changed the approach. We just sat down and said, like, how do we then create as much value? And the first thing that comes to your mind at that stage is reduce your costs, attract more clients. It didn't actually work. You would imagine that, the same way if you're at the market, for example, you're selling tomatoes at 5 kwacha, and then suddenly you get a bit desperate that by dropping them to 2 kwacha, they would sell, right? Yeah. But no, it didn't work. Because then what happened was that we were getting all these little jobs and being so busy with the little jobs that when a big job came by, we didn't have enough resources or time or the presence of mind, because you were just constantly fatigued to even deal with that, But something very interesting then happened. We just said, look, let's stop. We don't do anything less this amount. And I think the figure then was about, we said nothing less than 70,000 kwacha, like we don't touch. And lo and behold, suddenly it's an amazing thing. I think when you define what you are not, you suddenly get to see what you are and what you can be. But without those sort of barriers, you're on the treadmill, sort of going round and round and round and round and round. Yeah. So we said, right, whatever we do, we can't come in under this amount. And interestingly, you'd have thought, right, this is the end of it. But then you have to remember that at that stage, I was like, well, I'm already in the hole here. Yes. It can't get any worse than this. So if I'm going to go out, let me go out with some sort of dignity, right? Yes. So then to my surprise, I mean, they started coming in, because what happened is that we had more time to prepare better for our pitches, knowing that in a month, for example, we only needed about 4 or 5 of them, as opposed to 30 jobs doing business cards or flyers. We only had to have like 5 of these, and they would then take a whole week in preparing a presentation for a pitch. And even as I say we, sometimes it was literally just myself and my wife putting this together, in the living room, working until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. But then, because you spent so much time in doing this pitch, you looked at every single angle. And my whole idea, I had pitches where I'd go there and the client throws you with a curveball in the meeting and you can't. And that was like, yeah, exactly that. You just like, and so I was like, that's never going to happen. I need to know more about the company and its products than the marketing manager. In fact, it became a thing that, when I go there and I pitch that product, I need to throw them a question they can't answer, because that was a very empowering place to be. So it suddenly changed from being the guy who's trying to do them a service to being the guy that basically adds value to the whole organization as a whole, because suddenly they now see you as an authority on the subject, because you have done the research. So it's doing the work. And in quite simple terms, I think, it's basically like everything else. What you put in is what you get out. But you have to take the time. If you're going to go pitch and stand in front of somebody, first of all, understand that this is their company, that's their livelihood. They know a lot about it. True. So you're going to get quite close to understanding their business and their product, but you're never quite always going to be able to outdo them on that term. What you can do, however, is to understand the people that they are trying to market. So you see, it's like a triangle, right? So in most cases, the setup then was that, at the top there is the client, the brand. So say, for example, the milk, somebody makes milk. The milk is up there. And then in this other corner here, you've got the demographic, the people who consume this milk. And then you have an ad agency sitting in the corner. And so the milk had to go through to the ad agency and then through to the people, But by changing it, my approach was different. My approach was, look, you've got the people out there, which is the group they're trying to speak to. The brand is actually at the bottom, trying to climb up to the audience. And we are the little turbocharger. I love all things to do with cars and stuff. But anyway, we're in the middle, propelling this message to actually reach the desired audience. So therefore, because every company is trying to sell products, they're trying to reach people. If you understand people, the client will chase after you, because they're trying to get to the people. So as much as you're talking about, it's about creativity, Photoshop, Illustrator, it actually boils down to understanding the mindset of the people that you're trying to market to. Yeah.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Because I remember, not too long ago, I think it was a week ago, I saw a Zambia Boris ad, and then it was like, put some respect on it. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I think I saw that as well. But it was great.
Yes,
I'm just saying it was very good. It was a great advert. I think it worked really well. Yeah, put some respect. Yeah. Totally, man. Yeah.
No, Zambia Boris. Okay, I'll put some respect. Just for that, I put some respect on it.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to put my respect on it and not say anything about it.
Oh, all right. No, thank you very much for really enlightening, because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs who think when you get bankrupt, that's the end. There's no way to climb out of that.
Yeah.
And you've clearly illustrated that there's always a way out of anything.
Absolutely.
Now you talked of working with your wife. I want to get to collaboration, because I've noticed that's why most of us creatives headbutts.
Yeah.
Collaboration.
Yes.
No, me, I put in so much.
Yes.
He just comes in to say, no. Yeah. So this, I should get more. But how do you sort of find this balance, being with your partners, especially with creatives who are, Yeah, I know you guys with deadlines.
I have to admit, I'm guilty with that. I mean, initially, I think of it differently now. But yeah, there was a point when I was thinking to myself, yeah, that's the competition. Oh, this guy is doing that, and you're competing with that. And now, as I sit here with you, I can tell you, I don't see any competition. You have to get to a point where you change your mindset from seeing competition to seeing collaborators. When you're seeing competition, it means you're in a limited mindset. You feel that we've got limited resources out there, that there are limited opportunities, and you can't be further from the truth, you know? Now, think about it. If you've ever gone, I mean, we've all gone to the movies, right? Yeah. So, movie asila, kwambochev mazina vicha. How many of those things do you see? Have you actually ever sat down and literally just gone through all the what are they called? Credits to the film?
Too much time.
Yes, when the movie is beginning, yeah, you see a Miramax film, a Chan production,
yes, like,
this and that. Exactly. That's because it's collaboration. But if you're Zambia, you want to write the song, it is a music manager, and then you're going to write the script, you're going to do the photography, you're going to do the whole lot, and so you've got basically this thing which is basically made up of very mediocre parts, because we're not all going to be strong in every single area. You know, and so I think it's going back to that whole thing about sort of understanding, drawing your line and understanding who you want, where you're trying to go, and that allows you to be able to rope in other people on projects. You know, I think for me, where I am now, even when it comes to something as small as a TVC or documentary, you know, I actually prefer a situation where you've got somebody write the script, then you go bounce it off somebody else just to get there. And yes, you are going to have to pay them for that. It's time. And if we don't start doing that ourselves, we can't expect the clients to respect that either. So you then bounce it off. Then you've got your audio, for example, right? You find a guy who's going to do the voiceover. He's getting a script by somebody else. But the voiceover guy might pick up something in the script that will enhance so you keep adding value to the production. Then that goes to somebody else who runs the studio, who's going to record the audio. And then that's then taken and somebody else does the video, if it's a TVC or the animation or whatever it is. But it takes those different individual skill sets. I mean, in Zambia, we all know, I mean, there's still a lot of, in Lusaka actually, let me not say Zambia, that's quite broad, but we've got a community of creatives. And a lot of us do a lot of sort of end-to-end work, in the sense that I'm gonna come up with a concept and I'm gonna design it myself and I'm gonna post it myself, and you know, and that is fine to some degree. I mean, you can have some relative success doing that, but that is still within the limitations of what you as an individual can come up to, can basically do. But when you broaden it up and you realize that it's a team that requires, you know, it's a project that requires multiple perspectives, and you build a team around it, and you can, you know, can you imagine if we got the best minds in Zambia to work on, say, maybe one TVC? Just think about just one TV advert. You know, you get all of these guys and you put them together, you put them in a room. That'll be very expensive, number one. But I think that would be amazing. I mean, I can't wait to have a big enough budget that would allow me to bring in all of that. And that's where we need to be. It's about collaboration. Absolutely. There's no reason why Zondi here would have a black magic camera. I want to go and buy a black magic camera. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe what about if I bought a very good audio recording device? Then suddenly together we've got value, we can feed off each other. But unfortunately there's still a little bit of that, and I think until we get to that point where we see each other as collaborators, that's when we need to move forward. I'd really love for us to be able to set up a creative council. I mean, there are people in Kenya that have been able to do that, you know, and it works out quite well. So you've got this council and you've got these members, and everybody sort of, when a project comes in, it's floated around and everybody can take a piece of the pie. But then you get such higher caliber work because it's got multiple filtration points. So before the client sees it, it's been criticized by other creatives, and there's nobody who's going to judge it harsher than other creatives, right? So if it can survive the creative test, trust me, that's gonna be approved by the client.
And speaking to that, do you think as Zambian creatives we've gotten to a point where I feel like we've created cartels? Is only this, if I get a TVC, for example, I'll only float it to Loliwe, who also only floated to someone else, who also only floated. So in the end, it's just always between the three of us, it's always between the four of us.
And then the work eventually starts to become the same. Now, going back to what you talked about, the brand, that then becomes a brand. That becomes a brand of like, because all your work is going to come up in a certain way.
Yes.
Because you're not innovating. You can only innovate when you have a different perspective. But there's that whole comfort zone that would tell you to say, no, if it's not broken, let's not fix it. Huh? Let's just do it amongst ourselves. Yeah.
Yes.
But then time is actually constantly moving, and if you're not moving with it, then you're moving against it. Yeah. So it's only when you bring in different people, and every project has a different individual or a different component that can add a different dimension. It's only at that stage that we start to grow and to change. So yeah. But yeah, to your point, yes, we do have those cartels. We've got limited resources. I'm not going to lie. Marketing budgets are tight, but I also feel that I think we need to start charging more. We need to start valuing ideas more. The same way that for the longest time we could not quantify mediums like out of home, we also are still struggling to quantify the value of an idea. We're still struggling to do that. I mean, there have been some brilliant ad campaigns that we've seen that have become slogans when people, start using the campaign slogan or some copy from a TV ad in modern everyday language, you're onto something strong. Slap D had that song, Kui Chaila, that was quite a big song. And a lot of conversations around, not just on social media, but around people, they started using that as a phrase. Yeah, now, how do you quantify that? How do we quantify that? Because at the same time, there's things like virality, your idea's ability to grow legs. I've got this idea here, a bit like the Zambia one that I mentioned here, where people just started sharing, and so these people are sort of sending it to friends or then sending it to other friends. I mean, if you charge the client 5p, and then suddenly this thing has gone viral.
It's everywhere.
But because once they've paid you, that's it, you're done. We're not capitalizing on that. So the key questions now start to come up to say, how do we future-proof earnings based on that? Because sometimes you're a one-hit wonder. Let's face it, it does happen, right? It does happen. We know of, say, musicians who've been able to do one song, but still been able to survive off the royalties of that one song. It shouldn't be any different, because intellectual property is intellectual property. It shouldn't be that different with us artists. You can say, right, okay, no, but we hired you to make this advert. But in actual fact, it took the creative mind to say, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put that there. And when you look at modern patent, it's about how you arranged it. That's different. Somebody can use the same font and the same picture and the same logo, whatever. But what makes it uniquely yours is in how you've arranged it, how big certain elements are and how they come together. But until we get to a point where we can actually start future-proofing this, and again, that's another way, the different approach that I talked about in terms of saying, right, you can pay me nothing or just a small amount, but I'll put this on YouTube, and I mean, you can start out small, even if we say, look, 10 kwacha per view, and it goes viral, and there's suddenly 1 million. Roberto's song, I think, went to, is it 1 million views? Yeah. So imagine if you had a message, or if you had product placement in there, and you've got 1 million views, what would be the value of that? So our friends, I'm not even talking in the US or in first world countries, I'm talking just South Africa and Kenya and Nigeria. They've sort of gotten there. They've gotten to the point where they can actually basically stake and take the risk with their creative work, but for a bigger reward. Once we transition to that, I think we'll start to see some amazing things, because that stimulates competition and innovation. And if people, it's one thing you're sitting there thinking, yeah, this guy has paid me $5,000 and I'm working at 02 trying to finish this artwork, and that $5,000 is basically that. It's very different from you sitting there and thinking, if I really knock this out of the park, I could get a lot more if this goes viral. I think suddenly you start to see a change. We have been sort of trying to see how we could package this and how we could change that costing module. And we're not there yet, but just the fact that I think we've started to think around those lines is quite encouraging, and I would encourage other people to do the same. But again, this would be would be a lot easier if we have this creative council. I think it's something that we need to do, and sadly, I don't have much time to sort of set it up myself. But somebody needs to take it up out there.
Yeah. Free idea.
Yes.